Is there a conflict between knowledge on the one hand and faith on the other? Is there a war between science and religion? In the early part of Book 5, Augustine has some powerful things to say in response to such questions. Questions that I think are still very much on our minds today. And his answers may well surprise some modern readers. Now, at the close of Book 4, we spoke of how Augustine did not find the answer to the riddle that it is his own life through study. And I think that there's a way that a reader could think that Augustine is going to finally take a leap of faith toward religion and away from reason and intellectual questing, but nothing could be further from the truth. His studies continue to inform, and we will see in Book 5, Book 6, Book 7, they continue to illuminate and to help shape both his intellectual quest and his religious one. And in Book 5, his intelligence and knowledge force a crisis in his Manichaean religion. Here's what he says about that. Quote, "I began to compare some of the philosophers' doctrines with the tedious fables of the Manichaeans, and it struck me that the probability was on the side of the philosophers, whose power reached far enough to enable them to form a fair judgment of the world." End quote. Augustine then goes on to discuss science, especially the science of astronomy, how it accurately predicts eclipses and tells us much else that's true about the movement of heavenly bodies. Augustine finds fault that scientists are often filled with pride about their rational powers, and that scientists often fail to give appropriate honor to the God who created everything. That's a critique that Augustine levels at scientists 1,600 years ago. I think if Augustine were alive today, he would probably level that same criticism against a lot of scientists alive and at work today. Yet while Augustine calls for humility among scientists, he affirms the validity of their science and learns from them. Now he turns his attention again back to the Manichaeans and levels a critique. He says, "I remembered many a true saying of the philosophers about the creation itself, and I saw the confirmation of their calculations in the orderly sequence of seasons and in the visible evidence of the stars. And I compared this with the doctrines of Mani, who in his voluminous folly wrote many books on these subjects. But I could not discover there any account of either the solstices or the equinoxes, or the eclipses of the sun and moon, or anything of the sort that I had learned in the books of secular philosophy." And I should mention that by philosophy here, Augustine also includes natural science. "But still I was ordered to believe." I was ordered to believe, even where the ideas of the Manichees did not correspond with, even when they contradicted the rational theories established by mathematics and my own eyes, but were very different. Augustine here makes it perfectly clear. If a religion orders you to believe something that can be proven false, the problem lies with the religion. Now again, for a modern reader, this may seem counterintuitive in a day and age where we often see science pitted as somehow against religion, where science is the realm of truth and religion is somehow the realm of fantasy. Augustine rejects that outright. So again, here we find out that Augustine's learning provokes for him a religious crisis. And this crisis comes to a head in Augustine's encounter with a visitor to Carthage, a famous Manichae bishop named Faustus, who was in the world of Manichaeism at the time renowned to be the most learned, the most polished, the most eloquent, the best at arguing the truth of Manichaeism. And Augustine was genuinely looking forward to the arrival of Faustus because he wanted to hear from him. As Augustine says, and I quote, Bishop Faustus was known to be especially learned in the liberal arts. That's exactly the kind of guy that Augustine wanted to be able to set him straight and to take him out of this crisis of faith. So somehow Faustus would set Augustine straight and explain how scientific truth and Manichaean teaching could be reconciled. Well, that didn't work out. Manichaeism was not, in fact, shown to be true by Faustus. Faustus was a very eloquent guy, but it turned out that his learning in the liberal arts and sciences was rather superficial, and that the kind of apologetic account that he gave of Manichaeism was in no way satisfying to Augustine. So the crisis of faith was not overcome by the visit of this Manichaean bishop, but actually deepened by it. So Augustine began quickly to lose faith in Manichaeism, which had, we need to remember at this time, had held him for about 9 years. And I think we should be sympathetic about how devastating this loss must have been to Augustine, this loss of faith, this loss of a notion that he had a systematic worldview that was supported both by his intellectual inquiries and by his religion. But it was a devastation that it turns out wouldn't last very long. And we will see how this happens as we move to the middle of Book 5. We'll learn that Augustine plans to make a change in his religion and also to make a change in his life, as he will plan to move from Africa to Rome. But as we shall see, he comes to see that all of these plans of his own are actually also plans of God. So we're going to see the drama in a very special way of how Augustine's plans for his life turn out to be the plans that God has kind of quietly and even secretly has for him. And God's providence is at work in him even when he doesn't know it. Turns out that God uses Augustine's knowledge and learning to turn him away from Manichaeism and onto a path that Augustine as yet doesn't fully understand.